Before getting started, we got a brief ad for upcoming shows. Upcoming public shows that I'm on right now are none on the books right now. But that may change. If you want to keep up to date on upcoming public shows, go to connorkfietchain.com/email-list to sign up for my mailing list. And if you want to book a private curbside comedy show with New York City comedians coming right to your backyard, one of the comedians is me. Go to my website, connorkfietchain.com, to sign up. A percentage of all donations received at that show end up going to charity. Yeah, sign on up. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to the third episode of What's Up With Me. This is an autobiographical podcast about me, Connor Kfietchain, the comedian. Not too much life stuff on this show, mostly talking about what I'm up to in comedy. If you want to follow me, the best way to do that is not in person because of COVID. It is on Instagram at Connor_Kfietchain. You can find the spelling of that name in the description of this show because it is a doozy. That is for sure. Like I said up top in that little ad that I do for myself, bookings are open right now for the month of October, trying to fill it up. It is the last stretch before winter in New England. So if you are in Rhode Island, New Hampshire, surrounding areas within reason, connect with me. And whether it's your business, backyard, or event, we will show up with your equipment. That's what I'm up to a lot of right now. A little bit of a personal thing. I have been really trying to take care of my skincare. Really working on that routine. I'm about 1 month in. You can ask me questions about that on future episodes because it is something I'm growing more and more passionate about. Definitely trying to take care of myself a lot more, not just physical, but mental as well. But with that segue about questions, let's get into questions. We actually had some people ask me questions this week, which were great. I'm going to actually pull them up on my phone here to make sure I get the right questions. I'm really thankful for the people that ask me questions. If you in future episodes want to ask me a question, you can send me a question via Instagram. I have a little link tree set up in my bio, and you can ask me a question right there, or you can head to my website as well, or just comment on this video on YouTube if you're watching. And that's a good reminder for me. If you are watching on YouTube, like this video and hit subscribe, please. It does help a whole lot. But if you're just listening, well, rate, review this podcast. Remember, it comes out every other Monday. But let's get into these questions. Great questions. Some from the family, some from friends. The first one that I want to talk about is a great question. Who are some women in comedy you look up to? Great question. The question I appreciate. I mean, I grew up 3 older sisters. I've lived with a lot of women. Like, women in a lot of ways shape my life. And comedy is, at least, the way it's thought of, stand-up comedy, it's really male-dominated. White men in particular tend to dominate that space. So this is a really great question because there are a lot of phenomenal women in comedy. One that, I love her. Absolutely love her. I love Tig Notaro. Read her autobiography, which is not necessarily a funny book, but a great read. It talks about a really stressful time in her life where she thought she was in a ton of pain. She went to the hospital for a gut issue. And then as soon as she got out of the hospital, she learned that her mom died. And then after she found that out, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. Her girlfriend broke up with her. And then in the middle of all this, she came out with this special called Live or Live, depending on how you want to go about saying it. And it got her nominated, I believe, for a Grammy, I believe. But it's just phenomenal. It's so raw. Like, she's on stage. She's clearly speaking off the cuff and just opening her heart Um, and it's very moving. I recommend reading the book. I recommend listening to the album. But I love Tig Notaro for a lot of different reasons too, because she's really slow, really deliberate. She's known as a comics comic. Her latest album came out. Her opening joke is about a rug and why she has a rug on stage, and it gets me every single time. I think it's such a brilliantly written joke. So Tig Notaro is definitely one of the female comedians I look up to a whole lot. Eliza Schlesinger, I kind of butchered the last name a little bit, but I remember a few years ago, I hadn't watched her. A lot of my friends were like, you got to check her out. She's great. And she is. She's very funny. But what stands out to me is the voice she does when she does an act out. When I was watching her special with my friend, that was the first time I'm like, oh, you need to have voices in stand up. Like I'd watched all these other people and she was just doing this very different voice on stage in her act outs. And I was like, oh, that's important. And like she made me realize something. So those are two bigger name comedians that other people may know of. I want to highlight two New York City comedians as well, who are up and comers that I really look up to. First is Lee Land. Lee Land is just a hustler. She puts together a ton of shows, very funny, but she's always working. She's always trying to get better. And she got to New York a little bit after me. And the fact that she's grown her network and doing a lot of work to help other comedians in a space, like find a space to perform, a ton of respect. I really look up to Lee. Follow her on Instagram, and I'll put all that stuff in the comments for this episode, the description for this episode. And then another one is SB, and I'm gonna try my best with your last name, SB, but I believe it's Rivadeneira. And if I mispronounce that, please correct me because I got a tough last name. But I only knew SB for a very short period of time in New York, and she actually got there. I don't know. I'm not going to assume that I know the answer, but I remember we crossed paths like 3 or 4 times. She was starting to integrate herself into the New York community, and she'd done stand-up where she was from before. She's very funny, and following her on Instagram over the time of COVID, she's just clearly found a way forward in New York. And is doing a lot of Zoom shows, connecting with bigger names, getting a lot of recognition. So I just want to shout her out because I think she's great. So yeah, those are some of the women that I look up to in comedy, particularly stand-up comedy, because obviously there's a lot of different genres of comedy within the genre of comedy. It's the first question. Thanks so much for that question. Let's get on to the second one. The next one is from a high school friend. The question is, if you could go back to the start of COVID, what would you want to tell your past self? That's a great question. In part because I don't reflect enough in my life. That's in part what this podcast is about too. It's a time for me to sit down and go, oh yeah, what is up with me? I've written down a few things that really stand out. And the first is get ready to appreciate family in a whole new way. Family is an important thing in my life. Like I said, 3 older sisters, love them to death. I have nieces and nephews now, love them to death. But I've always loved my family. I've always thought a lot of them. But having this time at home and being able to develop as a comedian on my parents' front porch, and like spending 4 months with my parents as an adult, getting to perform in my sister's backyard, my aunt's backyard, my like extended family coming to shows and spreading word about Curbside Comedy. Like I knew I had a great family. I just didn't know I had one that took so much action, would take so much action to help me in what a lot of people might have just thought was like, oh, he's a stand-up phase. So yeah, I appreciate my family in a whole new way. And that's something I wish I had known going like could tell my pre-COVID self, because it's a really remarkable feeling. Like I just feel so much love in my life, especially for and from my family. So that's the first. The next one is get ready to grow and learn a lot as an individual. I feel like this whole time, I guess it's hard to say. It's hard to say because I don't think anyone knew COVID was going to be this long and this drastic. I remember leaving New York City thinking, well, this might be a few weeks. I might be home for a few weeks and I'll be back. And obviously that's not what happens. But for that first few months, I just didn't feel like there was an opportunity to learn and grow. It felt like life had been put on pause. I think I remember telling my dad that. It's like, feels like everything stopped. And now 6, almost 7 months out of New York City, I really think I've just grown a ton, an absolute ton. And I don't think I was ready for that. And I'm like catching up, which brings me to that last thing. What I could tell my pre-COVID self is get organized. I'm not an organized person. People who've had conversations with me recently around business ideas, around like a lot of ideas, recognize that I am not the person to sit down and make a schedule, make a to-do list. I try and figure it out as I go. And these last few weeks, I've really started to put into place a schedule for myself. For freelance work, I do some freelance podcasting stuff, for Curbside Comedy stuff, for writing, and it's actually helped me feel better about myself in a lot of ways. So not everything is like a positive growing. Some it's going back and going, oh, I could have been better. So those are the 3 things that really stand out to me. The last one more question, talked about family a little bit. I got a great family, like I said. 2 questions from the same person. I thought they were from different people at first, but it's, what's the most unexpected thing funny you've witnessed at a large family gathering? And the second question is, you should just do a whole episode on family reunions. Yeah. My family is huge. My mom is one of 8. I've been writing a lot of jokes about that recently, trying to work on things. Unexpected. I feel like if I share unexpected things, unexpected people might be blindsided because my family just likes to have a good time. I will say something that's always expected, but is unexpected to other people, is how much our family loves to sing God Bless America. I'm writing a joke about that now. Every family gathering, though, we sing God Bless America, including one show recently. And I will put a clip of that singing of God Bless America at the end of a Curbside Comedy show. A Curbside Comedy show usually has a question and answer at the end. And the last question of this show, which I had a lot of family at, was, can we sing God Bless America? And I filmed that moment and I will put that in. And you can tell by Trevor's reaction that this was very unexpected. All right, everyone.
As the Heath family, we sing it all the time, but we sing it loud and off key.
God bless America, my home, sweet home.
I'll talk more about family. Family reunion scheduled for 2022. We do it every 3 years, so I'm sure there'll be more to talk about in the future. Those are the questions. They were, thank you so much. Like I said, if you want to submit questions in the future, definitely do that. We're going to be talking about the meat of this episode. I don't like to run these things too long, 'cause I really don't think I have a ton to talk about in my life that's worth sharing. There's a lot of things that I find very exciting, but like, I don't know, if you read someone's autobiography and it's 300 pages and they're 60 years old, what is that, 5 pages a year, maybe? So not everything makes the book. I do want to highlight this. Since the last episode, Curbside Comedy has surpassed $5,000 raised for charity. And that means a lot. A whole lot to me as a person, just because it's a nice milestone. Like, I didn't think when COVID started that I would be impacting anyone outside myself when I started performing again. It just, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to simply perform again. And so the fact that this is where we are now just says a whole lot Like it really opens my mind to the possibilities of what the future looks like, and the way this comedy itself too can impact like a lot of organizations and help spread some of the wealth. What did it take though? What did it take to get to $5,000 raised for charity? I assume some of this audience for this show are comedians going, how did this happen? And a lot of that is something I'm really trying to work and to develop, because a lot of it is flying by the seat of our pants right now. There's some strategy, there's some thoughts behind it, but it's not developed quite the way I want it to be yet. So it's a nice flowing structure. So what did it take? It just took a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, a lot of figuring stuff out. Our last big shows at Newport Craft, they were incredible there. They really did a good job with the seating arrangement, make people were socially distanced, getting people their beer, their food. If you're ever in Newport, check out Newport Craft. I love them. Such great people. But it was going down a lot, communicating with them a lot, making sure everything was in sync with them, their business, making sure we were doing right by them. And all those lines of communication back and forth just take a little bit of time. And then you think that we've done over 40 shows too. Like each show doesn't have the same extent of communication with the host as Newport Craft, but they do have a host that you need to be in communication with. And it's just, you're constantly trying to get to know people, make sure that they're comfortable with what you're doing, they understand what you're doing. So it's a decent amount of hustle, a decent amount of grind. Just with Trevor and I wanted to make this happen. We want to keep performing. And the only way we can continue to raise money for charity is by continuing to perform. So it's just hustle, grind, and will to make it happen. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to raise $5,000? I guess it feels good. I mean, like, again, this wasn't the goal. And I'm saying it's not the goal. Like, it's not amazing. It is amazing. It's just like, actually, I'm realizing now, if the byproduct of what you want to do is the fact that you raised $5,000 for charity, then that's actually really special. That like just hit me in a wave. The byproduct of what you want to do. So what I want to do is perform. The byproduct of wanting to perform is raising $5,000 for charity. Yeah, it feels good. It feels good. And it feels like it feels like the beginning. And that's a lot of what I've felt like too. It feels like we're just at the beginning of something that can do a whole lot more. And that's what I want to explore in the future. What does it mean? Like to me specifically, I think I talked about that. I have my notes in front of me, but it just feels cool. Like I feel proud. I feel like it's part of the story. I think that's part of why people are engaging in the story of Curbside Comedy and wanting to see where it goes. And I'm glad that people are latching onto that, and it's a really positive thing. What's next after $5,000 raised for charity? Hopefully 10, hopefully 20, hopefully 50 someday. All lofty goals, and it's all going to take a lot of work, a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, a lot of will. But what's next is hopefully just more shows. Like that's the way it goes. Like the product is the comedy. And so hopefully more shows continue to come in and we like figure out a smooth way in where it's like, if it's ebbs and flows of bookings and shows, hopefully we can streamline it so it's very consistent, very smooth. And that's, I really think, the goal moving forward. And a lot of that is education, word of mouth, and just getting, the word out about this thing, this idea of comedy going straight to the people. Yeah, that's kind of the meat. That's the biggest thing that happened. It's right now, beyond the $5,000 raised for charity. What's next is figuring out what performing looks like in the winter, what a potential move looks like to an area that allows for outdoor shows, where the weather allows for outdoor shows during this pandemic, because indoor shows, we're seeing spikes. Cam Newton today, the day I'm recording, which is Saturday, 2 days before this episode comes out, he just got COVID. President Trump got COVID. So you're seeing spikes again. You're seeing bigger names. It's not going away. And you can think about, oh, we'll go inside because the rules allow it. Well, rules can change really quick, and the safest way to do it is outside. So I'm trying to figure out where to go, how to move, bring this idea with me wherever I end up going. So stay tuned for stuff like that. It's all going to happen slowly because there's a lot of details, but also quick because, winter's coming. So the day-to-day will be slow, but over the long period, looking back, it'll seem like a really quick period of time. All right, wrapping things up with this show, I like to talk about what I'm writing about, what I'm listening to. Writing's really come to a halt in a lot of ways. I'm starting to get back into it. It's because we had a lot of public shows. I mean, in addition to Newport Craft, we had a show at Wimbury in Hampton, New Hampshire. We had a show at Apollo Vineyards in Derry, New Hampshire. A lot of communication with them, a lot of travel for those. Logistic stuff that took precedent over writing to make sure that we did right by these businesses that we're trying to help out. I'm trying to write more while planning all this other stuff, working on a podcast, working on a few freelance contracts. But I really, really interested, and I have been for a long time, writing about mental health, mental illness, attacking the stigma, and like figuring out a way to communicate that, because it's something that's important to me. With family history, it's something that's important to me because of friends, because of people I know. And I think everyone benefits from having those conversations, making sure they're checking in with their mental health, because it's a part of their entire health. So I'm trying to figure out how to make jokes out of a fairly serious subject, but a subject that needs to be talked about more. I've been listening to, actually this past week, it was last week, because Wednesday we were on the show. So 2 weeks ago, Friday we were on the show at Newport Craft. Wednesday we were actually on Man About Town, which is a radio show on WBLQ. And Ed Krasnick, who is a writer for The Sopranos, he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm, was also on. He was talking about his podcast called Mental Health Comedy Podcast. And I just started listening to that, and they talk a lot about how to actually engage with your mental health and your physical health. I started listening to a bit of Tom Segura yesterday, started listening to audiobooks with all the traveling for shows. Tina Fey's Bossy Pants. It's less structured. Again, trying to this last week plus get things structured. A lot of it's business focused right now, and hopefully figuring out the structure on that, it allows me to then focus and structure the creative side of things that I need to continue to do as a stand-up. A little bit outside of how I normally am, but I think that's okay because I feel okay mentally. I feel okay physically. I'm getting into a routine. So you got to be patient with yourself. You can't try and put 20 pounds of work into a 10-pound bag. And I used to get really upset at myself for not being able to get those 20 pounds in. But now I'm realizing, be okay with yourself. Trust that things are going to work out as long as you continue to work hard at them and stay organized, which is, again, going back to that great question from my friend Julie about what I wish I'd known pre-COVID. That's kind of what's up with me. Yeah. What's up with you? I hope to hear more. I'm loving that these comedy shows have allowed me to connect with people that I haven't heard from in a long time, who are sharing support, who are interested in coming to shows, who are interested in booking shows. If you have questions for next episode, which will come out a week, 2 weeks from when this episode comes out, every other Monday, like I said, head to my Instagram, submit a question through there, head to my website, or comment on this YouTube video if that's where you're watching. Please, again, subscribe and like this video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, which you can listen to this podcast or wherever you're listening to podcasts, you can please rate, review this show. Find me, Connor Kwiecień. I don't know if I said that this time. I think I did. Find me on Instagram at Connor_Kwiecień. Look for the spelling in the description of this show. And check out Ed's podcast, Mental Health Comedy Podcast. And I hope what's up with you is good news. And if not, you're taking the right steps to take time for yourself, figure out best ways forward to make sure you're staying healthy physically, mentally, all that. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it. Please book a Curbside Comedy show if you are close enough, and stay tuned for more information on how this whole thing develops. Also, give a listen to my good friend Maxim Allen's podcast, Don't Quit Your Day Job. All right. Bye.